decimating Iran. It's about time. And frankly, it should have been done long before me. It should have been done before other presidents.
120 warships. That is how many Iranian vessels the United States Navy has destroyed or disabled since February 28th. 2 carrier strike groups, 8 Aegis destroyers, $40 billion of naval firepower deployed across 2 oceans. And the result? The Strait of Hormuz is still sit anchored in the Gulf, going nowhere. The world economy bleeds $40 billion a week. We did not lose a single ship. We did not lose a single engagement. We eliminated the entire Iranian submarine fleet. Every Soleimani-class corvette, every drone carrier, every major surface combatant Iran ever built. And the shipping lane stays shut. So here is the equation nobody on television is solving. How does the most powerful navy in human history win every engagement and still lose the corridor? The answer is not a carrier. It is not a destroyer. It is not an F-35. It is a 50-year-old airplane the Air Force has been trying to retire for a decade. An aircraft top Pentagon officials called obsolete, right up until the moment they needed it more than anything else in the inventory. This is the Warthog equation. And it is one of the most counterintuitive calculations we have ever run. Before we talk about the weapon, we need to understand the battlefield. Because the battlefield is the whole problem. Television will tell you the Strait of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles wide. That number is correct and completely misleading. The actual shipping lane, the corridor where tankers must legally pass, is 6 nautical miles, 2 miles inbound, 2 miles outbound, 2 miles of buffer between them. That is the entire playable space, 6 miles. Everything outside that corridor is Iranian territorial water. You do not enter it without starting a different war entirely. Now consider what Iran has placed inside that 6-mile corridor. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates more than 1,500 fast attack craft, not warships, speedboats, fiberglass and composite hulls, most under 15 tons. The slowest run at 50 knots, the fastest exceed 70. Iran claims some of its newest designs break 100. These are not targets a radar was designed to track. They are small, low to the water, and they move faster than most pleasure boats in Miami. Each one costs between $50,000 and $500,000, and each one carries the Nasser-1 anti-ship missile, 35-kilometer range, terminal speed of Mach 0.9, enough to mission kill a frigate. Their doctrine is simple. Swarm 30 to 50 boats simultaneously from every direction. Overwhelm the sensors, saturate the defenses. Force the destroyer to choose which boat to shoot, knowing that every missile it fires costs more than every boat it aims at. That is not a military tactic. That is an accounting attack. Let us run the numbers that the Pentagon ran and did not like. An SM-6 interceptor costs $5.3 million. Firing it at a $50,000 speedboat is a 100-to-1 cost ratio in Iran's favor. A harpoon costs $1.5 million and was designed to track cruiser-sized targets, not composite skiffs doing 70 knots between container ships. The Mark 45 5-inch gun fires 16 to 20 rounds per minute. Respectable against one target, hopeless against 50. The Phalanx CIWS empties its magazine in 20 seconds and takes 4 minutes to reload. And the F/A-18E Super Hornet, the carrier's primary strike aircraft, costs $30,000 per flight hour, flies too fast to visually distinguish an IRGC patrol boat from a Kuwaiti fishing vessel among 3,200 civilian ships, and its on-station time at combat loadout is a fraction of what this mission demands. The Navy does have one tool built for this kind of fight. The MH-60R Seahawk helicopter, Hellfire missiles, cabin-mounted machine gun. It can patrol, identify, and engage small surface targets. But the Seahawk carries 4 to 8 Hellfires per sortie, limited loiter time, and it is exposed to the same 12.7 millimeter and 14.5 millimeter ground fire that saturates the strait, without the 12,200-pound titanium cockpit enclosure that keeps an A-10 pilot alive. The Seahawk is a scalpel. The swarm problem needs a chainsaw, so the missiles are too expensive, the guns are too slow, the jets are too fast, the helicopter is too small. That is not a list of bad weapons. That is a pattern, and the pattern points to a single conclusion. The Navy brought a surgical laser to a knife fight, and the knife fight needed a shotgun. The shotgun already existed. The Pentagon just wanted to throw it away. If you are still in this brief, you already understand something most viewers do not, that the outcome of this conflict will be decided not by the most advanced weapon, but by the correct one. Subscribe to Strike Brief. We do not celebrate weapons. We calculate whether they work. Type Warthog in the comments if this airplane earned its place in the fight. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was not designed around a mission. It was designed around a gun. The GAU-8/A Avenger cannon was engineered first. Then the airframe was built around it. 7 rotating barrels, 30mm depleted uranium rounds, rate of fire 3,900 rounds per minute, 65 rounds per second. The aircraft carries 1,150 rounds in a drum the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. At a 2-second burst, the standard engagement, the pilot puts roughly 130 rounds downrange. Cost per armor-piercing round, $137. Now run the math that changes everything. 70 rounds into a fiberglass fast boat equals under $10,000. The same kill with an SM-6 costs $5.3 million. That is a 500-to-1 cost advantage, not a marginal improvement, a categorical shift in the economics of engagement. But the gun is only part of the equation. The A-10 carries 16,000 pounds of ordnance across 11 hardpoints. For medium-range targets out to 12 nautical miles, the pilot fires the AGM-65 Maverick, an infrared-guided missile costing between $150,000 and $170,000. Still 30 times cheaper than an SM-6. For fast boats mixed with drone threats, the A-10 carries APKWS, a laser guidance kit bolted onto a standard Hydra 70 rocket. Cost per shot? Approximately $35,000. Precision guidance at the price of a mid-range sedan. Now consider the physics that make those weapons possible specifically at Hormuz. The A-10's maximum speed is Mach 0.75. When it drops to low altitude and begins patrol loops over the strait, it flies at approximately 300 knots. Television analysts call this a limitation. They are wrong. When an FA-18E crosses the shipping lane at 500+ knots, every surface target stays in the pilot's field of view for less than 2 seconds. At that speed, distinguishing an IRGC patrol craft from a Kuwaiti fishing vessel among 3,200 civilian ships is essentially impossible. The A-10 at 300 knots gives the pilot 2 to 3 times longer to identify, confirm, and engage. The pilot does not read sensor data from a heads-down display. The pilot looks through the canopy, sees the rocket launchers bolted to the gunnel, sees the military paint scheme, and pulls the trigger. That is not low technology. That is the correct technology for the correct environment. The A-10 stays on station for approximately 1 hour and 50 minutes on internal fuel. With 600-gallon external tanks that extends to 2.5 hours over the strait, flying racetrack patterns, scanning, waiting, selecting. It does not burn fuel racing to and from a carrier 200 miles away. It lives in the kill zone. The wings explain why. The A-10 uses straight wings, not the swept wings of the FA-18 or F-35. Swept wings reduce drag at high Mach numbers, but increase it at low speeds. The A-10 never operates at high Mach. At 300 knots, straight wings generate lift more efficiently, burn less fuel, and deliver a tighter turn radius. That last point is decisive. With the shipping lane only 6 nautical miles wide, the A-10 can bank, reverse, and re-enter its patrol loop without ever departing the engagement corridor. The F/A-18 physically cannot execute that turn inside the approximately 45 kilonewtons, 10,000 pounds of force. Each of the A-10's 2 TF-34 engines produces roughly 40 kilonewtons of thrust. In a 2-second burst, the gun generates nearly as much backward force as one engine generates forward. The airplane physically decelerates during firing. That is not a design flaw. That is a measure of how much kinetic energy the weapon delivers downrange. Each 30mm depleted uranium penetrator leaves the barrel at over 1,000 meters per second, carrying enough energy to penetrate 69mm of rolled homogeneous armor. A fiberglass fast boat has 0 armor. This is not a fair fight. It was never designed to be. The A-10 will absorb the fire that comes back at it. The pilot sits inside a 12,200-pound titanium tub. The only aircraft in the American inventory with a cockpit encased in armor rated to withstand 23mm armor-piercing rounds and 57mm fragmentation. In Desert Storm, Colonel Bobby Efferson brought an A-10 home with 378 holes in the airframe. In Iraq in 2003, Captain Kim Campbell of the 75th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron lost all hydraulic control over Baghdad. Both primary and backup lines severed. She flew her A-10 home using manual reversion, a system of cranks and cables that bypasses every electronic and hydraulic control surface. She landed safely. The Distinguished Flying Cross followed. Before we talk about the weapon, we need to understand the battlefield. Because the battlefield is the whole problem. Television will tell you the Strait of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles wide. That number is correct and completely misleading. The actual shipping lane, the corridor where tankers must legally pass, is 6 nautical miles. 2 miles inbound, 2 miles outbound, 2 miles of buffer between them. That is the entire playable space, 6 miles. Everything outside that corridor is Iranian territorial water. You do not enter it without starting a different war entirely. Now consider what Iran has placed inside that 6-mile corridor. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates more than 1,500 fast attack craft, not warships, speedboats, fiberglass and composite hulls, most under 15 tons. The slowest run at 50 knots, the fastest exceeds 70. Iran claims some of its newest designs break 100. These are not targets a radar was designed to track. They are small, low to the water, and they move faster than most pleasure boats in Miami. Each one costs between $50,000 and $500,000, and each one carries the Nasser-1 anti-ship missile, 35-kilometer range, terminal speed of Mach 0.9, enough to mission kill a frigate. Their doctrine is simple. Swarm 30 to 50 boats simultaneously from every direction. Overwhelm the sensors, saturate the defenses, force the destroyer to choose which boat to shoot, knowing that every missile it fires costs more than every boat it aims at. That is not a military tactic. That is an accounting attack.
What is happening above the Strait of Hormuz right now is something the American military has never executed in combat at this scale. 3 branches of the armed forces operating simultaneously over a single 6-mile naval corridor, each one covering the gap the others cannot fill. Layer 1, the A-10, Air Force, flying racetrack patterns at 3,000 feet. The GAU-8 and APKWS handle close-range threats. The Maverick handles targets out to 12 nautical miles. Cost per flight hour, $19,000. Layer 2, the AH-64, Apache, Army attack helicopters operating from expeditionary sea bases, floating forward operating bases for Army aviation. Army helicopters staging from a Navy platform, fighting a naval battle. Each Apache carries up to 16 Hellfires and a 30mm M230 chain gun, flying at 200 feet, picking off the boats that slip through. Layer 3, the Navy itself, Aegis destroyers maintaining the air defense umbrella. SM-6 inventory preserved for the threats that actually justify the cost. Anti-ship ballistic missiles, cruise missiles flying at Mach 3. Directed energy systems handling drones. The littoral combat ship deploying drone swarms and mine-clearing systems. Here is the convergence equation. Before combined arms, the Navy fires SM-6 interceptors at $50,000 fast boats, $5.3 million per engagement. VLS cells drain in hours. After combined arms, the A-10 handles fast boats for $10,000. The Apache handles close-in threats for $70,000. The Navy preserves its vertical launch inventory for the Mach 3 threats nothing else can stop. The VLS cells last 10 times longer. The math flips. Iran's strategic miscalculation was assuming the Navy would fight alone. Their swarm doctrine was built to drain 96 VLS cells with 1,500 fast boats. The arithmetic was intentional. The IRGC studied the 2002 Millennium Challenge wargame, where a retired Marine lieutenant general used swarm boats to sink 16 American warships in the opening phase and forced the Pentagon to restart the exercise. Iran built an entire naval doctrine around that simulation. They did not account for the Air Force flying at 3,000 feet with a gun that fires 65 rounds per second. They did not account for the Army flying at 200 feet with laser-guided missiles launched from a Navy ship. The equation changes when the variables change. Why did the most powerful Navy in human history need to call the Air Force? Not because the Navy is weak. The Navy was engineered for blue water, open ocean, capital ships, precision weapons measured in hundreds of nautical miles. The Strait of Hormuz is brown water, a 6-mile shipping lane, 1,500 composite speedboats, cheap weapons requiring cheap answers. A good engineer does not use a wrench to hammer a nail. A good engineer selects the right tool. The right tool was a 50-year-old airplane flying at 300 knots with a gun that weighs more than a Volkswagen Beetle. $19,000 per flight hour versus $30,000. $10,000 per kill versus $5.3 million. But the A-10 will retire. Congress forbids the Air Force from reducing the fleet below 103 aircraft through September 2026. The transition plan for 2027 through 2029 remains open. So the question is not whether to keep the Warthog forever. The question is this: when the A-10 leaves, what fills the gap? Loitering drones with 30mm cannons, the MQ-9 Reaper adapted for maritime interdiction, or does the Navy finally build its own brown water weapon, an aircraft designed not for the deep ocean, but for the narrow contested corridors where wars are actually fought? We do not worship the machine, we worship the equation, and the equation says the right tool wins, not the expensive one. Strike brief: we do not cover the war, we solve it.